Test you. How many of you think you know what 2 plus 2 equals? And I know we've had problems with math education, but I just wait through this. Calista and I did a movie called Ronald Reagan, Rendezvous with Destiny. And we interviewed Lech Wałęsa in Gdańsk, Poland, and Václav Havel in the Czech Republic, the two great leaders of their countries in the struggle for freedom from the Soviet Union. They both said that the decisive moment was when Pope John Paul II went to Poland in June of 1979, a year and a half before Reagan took office. And in 9 days, he outlined and communicated a vision of religious liberty and a vision of man's relation to God that fundamentally shook the Soviet Empire. And they said from that point on, they were in a constant struggle between the dictatorship and the people. During that 10-year struggle, 10 years, they adopted the slogan, 2 plus 2 equals 4. It came in part from the novel 1984 by George Orwell, in which the torturer for the state says to the innocent citizen who's being tortured, if the state tells you 2 plus 2 equals 3, it equals 3. If the state tells you 2 plus 2 equals 5, it equals 5. And the citizen's thinking, but 2 plus 2 equals 4. Albert Camus, in his novel The Plague in 1947, wrote, there are times when a man can be killed for saying 2 plus 2 equals 4, because it threatens the authorities to be told the truth. I believe this single model is the most important insight to begin to get ourselves out of the trouble with. And let me give you an American version and see how many of you can come up with the answer. I'm going to give you the first half of an equation. If you can't afford to buy a house, what's the second half? How many of you would agree don't buy the house? I want you to think about this. We spent 20 years lying to ourselves about the possibility of putting people who can't afford a house into a house they can't afford and kidding ourselves about the consequences. And I will tell you frankly, I don't think the political class in Washington has learned one thing from this. The same people who lied to themselves the last 20 years are busy this month lying to themselves, and the only improvement they've added is they now try to write the bills late enough and big enough they don't have to read them. And then okay, so let me ask you a couple of questions. How many of you think that we are in trouble as a country? Just raise your hand. Very important. You're elected officials, you're leaders in your community, and it's virtually unanimous. How many of you think the current structure of government is too expensive and fails to deliver the services we need? Right? How many of you think you know more about your state than Washington does? Absolutely. Just trying to get a feel here. How many of you think you could save money and be more innovative without Washington micromanagement? Yeah, just trying to get a flavor. Now, I'm going to meddle for 1 second and suggest when you go back home that the same principle may apply to city, county, and school boards from a state level. American people, it can't just be a food fight between Washington and the state capitals. It has to actually mean a fundamental shift back to believing that the people with the most at stake, the people who have the most local knowledge, have to in fact be entrusted with the ability to try to lead their own lives. And that will require change in the state capitals fully as much as in Washington.